Welcome to another episode of Distory with Kate and Kirk. My name is Kirk from walruscarp.com, and today we're going to dive into the Disneyland 1955 version of Peter Pan. Last week, we touched on the original animation and film, and now we are bridging the gap and heading into the attraction both with concept, construction, and scene by scene in the actual ride. With me to go flying over Neverland is Kate, the Disney Cicerone. Kate, are you ready to get pixie dusted?
Always. I'm always ready to get pixie dusted. I'm very excited for this one in particular because we have some very rare concept art. And we know that we have a lot of Distory listeners that truly are just listeners. And we love you guys so very much. And we're glad that you're here. But you might want to pop over to Disney Cicerone on YouTube and check out some of the actual photos we're going to show you, because a lot of them are very rare and not often seen of the original 1955 Peter Pan's Flight attraction. So that being said, I want to dive in first with a quote from Walt Disney that I think will help kind of set the mood here. He said, "What youngster hasn't dreamed of flying with Peter Pan over moonlit London? Here in the happiest kingdom of them all, you can journey with Snow White through the dark forest to the diamond mine of the Seven Dwarfs, flee the clutches of Mr. Smee and Captain Hook with Peter Pan, and race with Mr. Toad and his wild auto ride to the streets of old London town. The time you spend in this carefree kingdom will be a dream come true for everyone who is young in heart." So I think that's a great way of setting up our visit to this attraction, the very first version of Peter Pan, of which there are quite a few now around the world. So I want to start, if it's okay with you, Kirk, with the prospectus before Disneyland was open. And go there.
I would love to get a perspective on the prospectus.
So we have a couple of these, and what these are, if you're not aware of them, is what they use to sell sponsors on Disneyland. So they usually accompanied some artwork, some concept art for what they're thinking that they might build, and they're trying to gather funding to actually build Disneyland with these prospectus. So there's a couple of different versions of them. This one is from 1953, and it's a very early one. In it, you can see that Fantasyland is still two words. It's Fantasyland, and they hadn't merged them yet at this point. So it describes Fantasyland. It says, "Fantasyland is a wonderful land of fairy tales come true within the walls and grounds of a great medieval castle whose towers loom 70 feet in the air. In the middle of the castle grounds stands a magnificent carousel in the theme of King Arthur and his knights. In this land of fantasy, we find the settings from the fairy tales." And then it goes through to describe that you ride through Snow White, the walk through Alice in Wonderland, which is we've talked about in our Alice in Wonderland series, and then the fly through the air with Peter Pan over London, past Big Ben Clock, beyond the second star to the right for Neverland, fly over Captain Hook's ship, the Indian encampment, the crocodile, Mermaid Lagoon, through Skull Rock. So that's all it talks about Peter Pan, because it was still such a very early concept. That's pretty much all they had. They're like, we think we want a Peter Pan ride. That's pretty much it, right? So then we get a later prospectus. We see this. This is from April 20th, 1954. This was written by Nat Weinkauf. And it begins with a description of Fantasyland, which is now merged into one word. And it says, "Next is Fantasyland. The entrance to this will be through a castle that will stand 75 to 80 feet high. And as you go through it, you find yourself in a castle courtyard. In the center of the courtyard, we'll have a King Arthur motif carousel, which children and adults can ride. Around the walls of the courtyard, there will be places of amusement, such as the Sleeping Beauty Wax Museum," which we obviously did not get the Sleeping Beauty Wax Museum. That's not a thing. "And Merlin's Magic Shop," which we did get a magic shop, where you can buy magic tricks. And there'll also be an eating place and a place to rest. I love that they call it an eating place, Kirk, and not a restaurant.
An eating place.
An eating place. Let's visit the eating place and have some lunch.
I go to many eating places, and sometimes I eat at them.
Oh my goodness. Then after you've taken in everything in the courtyard, you can walk through an archway and you'll find yourself in another part of Fantasyland. So here's where they're going to describe the actual rides, right? So it says, "Here you'll be able to experience the adventures of Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Pinocchio, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and other Disney stories. Let us explain what we mean by experiencing the adventures of the named above," because you have to think about this at this point, that Disneyland had never been built. Nothing ever had existed that would show a movie like a ride. This is an entirely novel concept at this point in history. So it says, it is a known fact that every child who has seen Peter Pan feels that he wants to fly just as the children did in the picture. Therefore, in the Peter Pan fly-thru, we will give the child or adult that experience. At the present time, the idea for the Peter Pan fly-thru is to have you walk up a ramp and find yourself on the rooftop of a London home. As you look out over the rooftop, you will see, in miniature, a forced perspective, the city of London laid out before you. There will be an overhead monorail system that will have a little ship-like car, such as used in the picture. After you have been seated in the car, you will literally fly over London, and as you pass Big Ben, it will chime. Then as you pass Nelson's monument, he will tip his hat. So, some animation there? Yeah, tip his hat. Soon you will go through the second star to the right, and as you go through the second star to the right, you will enter Neverland. As soon as you arrive, the pirate ship will shoot a ping pong ball at you. Kirk? And if you notice in this art that I'm showing you right now, you can actually see that near the top, there is a ship that is indeed shooting ping pong balls at guests. How fun would that have been?
That would have been awesome. This is like people would be stealing cannonballs all day, every day.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't that be fun though? But, like, it probably is a liability to have things actually like hitting guests.
Yeah,
but...
it probably just shoots below them, but shoots at them.
Yeah.
You know, and then it probably has like a sloping mechanism that would have captured it and then just kept on, you know, in like a cyclical manner.
I think that would have been fun. Had little black ping pong balls that it like shoots at your ship. Like, they should re-implement that. I think that would have been fun.
I will say this, if you think about because one thing in this concept art that always stood out to me were the smoke rings. I love how they integrated in Walt Disney World in the new villain show. When Hook is out there, there are two like hidden cannons that open up and blow smoke rings that actually the projectile goes, I'd say a solid 15, 20 feet before they disperse out. Like smoke rings, I mean, they tried to do it in Winnie the Pooh using sounds, and it always seemed to malfunction, and they'd fix it and then it wouldn't work again, or they wouldn't refill the solution. But that would be cool if they ever did a refurb to add the cannon smoke rings and the projectiles would be really cool.
That would be cool. Yeah, I think it would be fun to have some of those effects, but we sadly didn't get that in the final version of the attraction. There's a little bit more of this description, so I'm going to keep going here. It says, then you pass over the Indian encampment, Hangman's Tree, through the jungle, Mermaid Lagoon, under the rainbow, and into Skull Rock, where Captain Hook, behind the stalactite, will stab at you as you pass by. It's a very violent version of this attraction, but I mean, it's accurate to the movie, you know? Like,
yeah. I mean, like he is standing there with his sword out, you know?
Mm-hmm. So we did get part of that. It says the alligator will snap at you and Mr. Smee will shoot at you, but Peter Pan will guide you back home and you'll have experienced the adventure of Peter Pan. So some of that we're going to see later as we get into the attraction. What, Kirk?
No, just it's like everything's coming at you in this. You got Mr. Smee with his like giant musket with it's like flared out. You're almost getting stabbed by Captain Hook. You're almost getting eaten by an alligator.
Yeah.
I mean, they really have it out for you in the attraction.
Yeah, the only thing we didn't get is the ping pong balls, but pretty much everything shows
Everything
up.
else, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. One last thing that I want to share in terms of documentation before we move on is I do have this nomenclature guide from May 25th, 1955. So this was a pre-opening Disneyland nomenclature guide, which basically is just something that will give you the official name of what you should call things, right? Especially because they are establishing this for the very first time. This was written by Bill Cottrell. And so they do have a description for Peter Pan in Fantasyland. And it says, flight over London in a pirate galleon, past the second star to the right to Neverland and Skull Rock. So now we see it's not Neverland. They decided to change it to Neverland at this point. And it says Peter Pan's adventures with Captain Hook and the pirates, etc. And then 7 galleons, which they built more than 7, but I think 7 might be of what was in operation or was planned to be in operation at this point. Let's head on into the actual concept art for this attraction. We're going to start in 1953. This is actually August of 1953 with this Marvin Davis concept with a show building that's 3 times the size of the final space that they ended up having. This actually got from the Happiest Place on Earth book that just came out this past year by Don Hahn and Christopher Merritt. Really wonderful concept art in here. Some of it's really, really rare, in case you haven't picked that up. I think if you're a D23 Gold member, you got one for free. Anyway, in this concept, you can see that there is a few things in it that's more elaborate entrance to London at the bottom there. You'll also notice, Kirk, that this goes the opposite direction.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like a mirror. Like, you got to flip this because we go to the right, not to the left.
Right. So this goes clockwise instead of counterclockwise. And it also has a huge rainbow at the climax of it as well. So like at the pinnacle of the ride. And then we have the one that I'd showed you guys earlier, which is this 1954, it's late spring of 1954 Herb Ryman concept, which we do see that rainbow as well. It plays a big role in this concept, although it's not quite at the end. It's just like going out of Neverland into the Skull Rock. I want to point out that from the beginning, there was kind of three main scenes planned. We have like London Town, we have Neverland, and we have Skull Rock, right? And that seems pretty consistent throughout all of these concepts, even if the size and direction and everything else changes. So you can see in this Herb Ryman one, they make guests fly through these three large rooms. In this one, same as the one before, the flight path does go clockwise still. So we're still going to the left first and then around. You can see in this concept that there is a really elaborate entrance to this, Kirk, that is like London that you're walking into. Do you see all the buildings at the bottom?
Yeah, that would be the ideal.
Yeah.
But we ain't got no money.
No, we definitely don't. And I also noticed that there's a pirate ship that is floating by the moon in the London town scene, which is something that we see at the end much later on in different versions of this attraction. But I just think that's really interesting. And of course, the ping pong balls are out there. And I do want you to notice the Indian encampment that's kind of way out on a ledge at the top, because that sticks around. That is also from a Mary Blair concept that did make it into the movie as well, of the encampment being kind of out on a ledge. This is the outside of the attraction, the exterior of the attraction. We can see it was going to be called Peter Pan Fly-thru instead of Peter Pan's Flight. And you know what, Kirk, I love about this is the like upper level ship that's floating by. Do you see it? It's like there's like a bottom loading area, but there's also like the ships come out at one point and go in the exterior of the building so people could see them flying by.
Is that what that was supposed to be?
Yeah.
Like that's like a
I don't know.
Right above the sign, like on the marquee?
Yeah.
Or do you think that was supposed to be like a facade thing?
Oh, I don't know. That's interesting.
Because old school, there's lots of like dark rides, spook houses, like the old pretzel systems that would do that all the time, where they would go up to a second level and then they would like pop out and show you that they were moving around and then pop back in.
Right.
But I mean, I don't see any
track.
Not like they would necessarily do this in the concept art, but I don't see any track being laid. So it almost looks like it would be just like a 3D.
Like a static boat that's just there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
but
possible.
It would give you a concept, like, because obviously when there's guests loading in this tent area, you really can't see the galleons. So that gives you an idea of like what you'd be riding without being able to see through the crowds in the lines of the queue.
I think that that's a possibility, because I don't see that the track goes all the way by, although it would be kind of cool if the track did go outside. But that's true that the path that we just saw in the previous art didn't have any sort of outside track. So,
well, it would be really easy with this system, because they wouldn't need to build technically a second level or second floor, because the ride vehicles are not on the floor. They're suspended, and the suspension is just limited by how tall do you make the building. So the show building is the only thing that would hold it back, and how much clearance they would have. You know, that thing would have to clear the load area station to be able to make that work. I don't think there's enough space for that to happen.
No, I think you're right. It's probably for advertisement for the ride, especially because they were trying to entice people to buy tickets to ride it. So that would be
because this was what, a C ticket when it first opened?
It would be one of the big attractions at this point. So it would be a C, because A was like the minor attractions.
Yeah, Peter Pan was 35 cents. Mr. Toad was 35 cents. Snow White was 35 cents. Then Jungle Boat, Autopia, Moon Rocket, the Passenger Train, the Mule Pack, the Stagecoach, and the Mark Twain were all considered part of the C ticket. So yeah, this would be like the creme de la creme at 35 cents.
Yeah. So then that they definitely would want to use some advertisement to pull people in. So having the boat out front, especially because it was such a novel ride vehicle, which we'll get into in a little bit, that would make sense to me that probably is just for advertisement. That makes
probably
sense.
kind of like, what's that over your shoulder, Kate?
Oh, like my new book. So This Is Love.
What is that?
What Disney history teaches us about love. Yeah.
I think this would be a great time to talk about that.
This is my new book. So This Is Love, What Disney History Teaches Us About Love. And it did come out this week. So it's a collection of writings that explore how we experience love through the lens of Disney history and the Disney parks. So it's available at disneycicerone.com. So it's a brand new book out for everybody.
And if you are missing any of Kate's previous works, you can purchase all of them now through disneycicerone.com.
Yeah, it's also fun because that is where you can get bundles too, which is the only place you can get them. You can get bundles of print books, ebooks, and audiobooks all at disneycicerone.com. It's the only place you can get them at a little bit of a discount that way. So very excited to have a new book out for all of you. You know, since we were talking about what I'm doing, I think that we should also just mention what you're doing over there, Kirk, because you've been really busy as well.
Yeah. So the biggest thing that we just launched is an app that is now on the Apple App Store. I've been talking about on this program. It is called Mowd. That's spelled MOWD. It's an acronym for My Optimal Way to Discover. If you want to be a theme park hero and have all the information so you can make the best decisions, so you can wait in the shortest waits, you can find the exact food that you want, you can plan the perfect trip that you want that gets dynamically updated with wait times, reopen times. It has all of that in one seamless package, and you can get started for free right now by going to either mode.io or heading directly to the Apple App Store. We have 116 ratings, 5 stars. We're doing okay. And according to Jesse, to be honest, this app completely blows all the others out of the park.
There you go.
That's it.
It's true.
Now, if you end up wanting to get it on Android, because that's for a lot of people too, they don't have necessarily an Apple iPhone. We have, and it should be out very, very soon, but please go to mode.io/Android or just click the Get the App and click the Mode button for Android beta sign up. Put in your name, put in your email, and right here, it'll sign you up for when that Android beta comes out. What does that mean? It means you get the full version of the app completely for free as we are testing and porting the app to that system. But we are very, very close to having the Android beta online. So people will be able to use it on Apple and Android.
That's so great. Congrats, Kirk. That was a big project for you.
It is a big project.
Yeah, I would, before we move on and we will get back to the concepts for Peter Pan, I just want to say, Kirk and I have been doing this for 5 years now at Distory, and it's been really wonderful to watch, I think both of us, but I like watching you obviously more than myself, move and become accomplish all these big projects, and we say we're going to do something and then we do it, it's like we're going to move and now we're going to do this and then we're going to do it. And it's I feel like you and I are both kind of consistent in that, we're going to keep going and keep moving and keep running the marathon,
Yeah, I keep thinking about a content creator perspective. And I think, Kate, you hit the nail on the head, because the amount of people, I think about this all the time, because you never know what happens with platforms, YouTube, TikTok, they hold all the cards. So you can maybe get lucky with your draw hand, but they hold all the cards. They change the rules. It's up to them. So it's, as somebody who has an audience and wants to, push whatever thing that interests them or their process in life. For you, it's this inspiration coupled with history about the theme parks.
Yeah.
And you want more people to know about these stories. So you're uncovering them, and then you're bringing out prose to make it digestible for everyone to enjoy and enjoy the theme parks in a different way, which I think is really helpful. In my perspective with Mode, or even the clothing at Walrus Carp, I want people to have better experiences when they're in the parks, so that they can spend less time just, on all of the chaotic parts of being in a park. So you can just make decisions and have fun. Just have fun in the parks again without having to stress all the time. And even as somebody who's well educated in the theme parks, I never remember when the parks open, when are shows going on? Like all that stuff changes all the time. A ride goes down. I need to know when it's going to reopen. I didn't have any of those things. And that's why Mode got created. And I was like, this is something that can scale where we can, cause people will ask me on live streams all the time, like, hey, where should I rope drop? I get DMs, like at least 10, 15 DMs a day about just like, hey, I'm going this day. What do I do? And I just think like, that's why Mode exists, is because people have all those questions and I can't answer everybody all the time the best I can. So it's like having a little park expert or Jiminy Cricket with you that makes you the expert, and everyone will look at you like a hero. I constantly get messages going, dude, we went over to Rise when it said that Mode was saying it was going to reopen, and boom, it reopened right then. And everybody looked at me like, how? And it's just math. It's just math and probability. But man, does it make some magic in the parks. Like it has a tangible result that impacts people's trips in a positive way. So it's stoked to be able to do something that impacts people positively. And I think you and I mirror each other with that. And then the consistency of actually showing up and doing the work. I mean, even this, I mean, we've gone through so many seasons together and you and I haven't quit on each other.
Nope. We're still here.
We're still here.
Having a great time doing it, I think. So it's been fun.
Yeah. Today's been a good one. I like it.
That's a great place for us to dive back in because you guys are here for Peter Pan. But thank you for going on just a little side trail for us, because honestly, Kirk and I think we both have very similar missions, even though we accomplish it very differently, is that we really want to give meaning and value to all of you in the Disney parks and even outside the Disney parks, and bring a little bit of extra magic into your world. And that's what we're all about. We're really about you guys. So thanks for being with us, especially with Distory here. We love to...
Yeah, thank you for the support.
Yeah, we love to uncover all of these like details and things so that when you go on a ride, I remember an interaction I had in Disneyland with a really wonderful couple that said that they were listening to our Mr. Toad series on the way to the park so that they could go look for the things in the ride because they were locals and they just came all the time. So that was like their tradition, is they would look for the things that we talked about on Distory in the ride. I was like, how cool is that? That's such a fun thing. So,
and wait, kids, there will be more for some future projects with Kate with that. I think you'll have some really great experiences in the park with Kate being your guide.
Yes. So that's stuff in the works.
Dot.
All right. Well, let's dive back into Peter Pan. We think that this is probably a Bruce Bushman concept for this, but this does depict what Marvin Davis was starting to lay out for the actual ride in late September of 1954. So where the guests fly through 3 large rooms, like we were just seeing, and they decided the galleon's flight path at this point should go clockwise instead of counterclockwise. And they added 2 new scenes, Crocodile Creek and Hangman's Tree. And they cut Herb Ryman's rainbow at the end. Well, this one still has a rainbow, so not in this one. But that was the idea. So in November of 1954, this project moved to Bill Martin, which we think this is likely his exterior concept art for it. He kept the 3 rooms, but changed the direction of the galleons to counterclockwise and eliminated Crocodile Creek and Hangman's Tree. And so this, I believe, is his art. And we also see it says Peter Pan Flight to Neverland. So they haven't quite nailed down the official title for the attraction yet. But this is where we see those like medieval tents come in really strongly. We did see it a little bit in the Herb Ryman one, but now we see it kind of more like what we're actually going to get for the attraction itself. So in May of 1955, Ken Anderson designed interiors and fabricated the attraction. He said, "There wasn't time for a lot of preliminary planning. We just went in there and did them. We had already done the feature films, so the look, the story, even the key scenes were already thought out. We knew the theme and we knew how much space we had, so we just started in." This pretty much is what we get in the attraction in the end. So it just started in London town and it flies over London. Then it goes through the second star to the right into flying over Neverland with the Pirates Cove and Indian encampment. I think the only thing we really kind of lose here is this rainbow, because I haven't seen any pictures of that whatsoever, or if it did exist, we just don't have photos of it. Then you go past Skull Rock and then into the Skull Rock scene in a cavern with Captain Hook stabbing at you and Smee shooting at you. and the TikTok croc in there as well. So this is very close to what the actual attraction ended up being. I do also have some development photos of Ken Anderson from this time. You can see this one's gone around quite a bit. So you've probably seen this if you like Disney history at all, but you can see Ken Anderson is on the right holding something that looks like Neverland in his hand. And then that is Ralph Hewlett on the floor, actively sketching the diagram, the layout or the blueprints rather, for Peter Pan for the track layout. Then we also have this one, which I think is really fun. This is a photo of Fred Yorger and Ralph Hewlett checking the sight lines on the model for the entry through the children's bedroom into scene 2 of London Town. So they're literally looking through it to see what it's going to look like for that forced perspective of London Town.
Kate, which one do you want me to, do you want to be looking through? I got glasses here, so I could.
And then I also have some pictures from the actual model, which I thought was really fun. And this shows the the galleons are actually up on like a little stand, so that they're up in the air. And then you can see the forced perspective Big Ben, Nelson's Monument, and also the Tower Bridge as they fly over the Thames River.
As he tips his hat to us,
yes,
which surely will be present.
I also have this one, which is just a slightly different perspective of that same scene. And again, these are extremely rare photos. Like all Fantasyland rides, guests were supposed to fulfill the role of the lead character. So like Peter Pan or the Darling Children, you were supposed to be flying out the window. I am inclined to believe that you were supposed to be the Darling Children in this, because they say you don't see Peter Pan in the attraction, but we do actually see a version of him. So maybe we're Peter Pan and not his shadow. That could be. So in any case, we're supposed to be the main characters. And George Whitney told Joe Fowler that guests were getting confused because they didn't see the main character, and suggested that they feature the main character in the rides, but he was largely just kind of ignored until many, many years later. They started putting the actual main character in the attractions, which we've talked about previously on Distory, but I just thought I'd mention it here as well.
Yeah, we had that same thing with Mr. Toad and with Snow White and with Alice.
Right. And speaking of Snow White and Mr. Toad, those rides had some like building tension as you went through the attraction, right? Like we saw, you're being like a witch is dropping a boulder on you, and in Mr. Toad, you're like crashing through virtually everything. And so it is this like tension. And it's not until you get off the ride that everything you can like breathe a sigh of relief. Well, this attraction was extremely different than those in that it was meant to be a ride of beauty and wonder and more of a peaceful experience. And the other difference is that this one doesn't have as many painted flats as all of those. There was a lot of just like flat wood that they painted, especially for Mr. Toad's Wild Ride in the beginning. But this one had a lot of 3-dimensional art in it, and that is because you're actually flying around it. So it can't have a backside that's just flat, right? So
yeah, I mean, they utilized a lot of flats in here, but they did need actual sculpts for, like boat, island, physical buildings,
right?
And Skull Rock, like
characters.
You needed to have physical build outs of those rather than, I mean, they use a lot of flats in all the characters for Mr. Toad, but I feel like, don't you think, can't quote me on this,
okay,
but don't you think, based on our previous episode when we talk about how near and dear Peter Pan is to Walt Disney personally, that this attraction got a little bit more time, attention, and probably funds to be a little bit more immersive than, say, the other ones?
It absolutely did. It was definitely one that they worked on sooner. And Mr. Toad was almost kind of like a late addition into Fantasyland. They were going to put it in Tomorrowland, and then they were going to do Alice, but then they had to pivot because it was just too much to do to get done in time. So like Mr. Toad was almost an afterthought. I'd say like then Snow White was kind of like next on the agenda, like in terms of least important. And then Peter Pan, though, was painted by Grosh Studios. So it was obviously the money was advocated there, whereas the Disney artist had to step in to paint things for Mr. Toad, and it was just not given as much love in the beginning. I do think this was a pet project of Walt Disney, and he loved it so much. And we see all those wonderful photos of him, testing out the boats, getting in the boats, riding the boats, looking so happy. Like, we don't really get that with Snow White and Mr. Toad. I don't know if I've ever seen pictures of him in those. Well, I think we saw one in Mr. Toad, but like he really, like we see a lot in Peter Pan. He clearly really had a love of this attraction. That's a good point, Kirk. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's particularly because you had mentioned previously how this wanted to really dive you into like the storyline, and it does feel more cinematic than the other ones. Like, so graceful, beautiful, almost as if we're like in the celluloid itself, you know, like we're traveling through the immersion where like Mr. Toad is like a big old mess, and it doesn't even follow necessarily the archetype of the story, but it's just, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And you end up in a place that's not even involved in the movie at all, but this is
exactly. Yeah. So I think this is more of a beautiful, I think that was a great way, the way you phrased it.
Yeah. And of all of the original Fantasyland attractions, this one follows the film most closely, I'd say. Obviously Mr. Toad takes that big detour, and Snow White even has some things that are not consistent in terms of how the movie was, like with the evil queen looking in the window of the cottage and stuff, like things that didn't really play out in the movie and just more gave you a feel for things. So this one was that. And we also mentioned previously that these Fantasyland attractions were supposed to be 3 different feelings, right? Like Mr. Toad was like the wild, thrilling one, and the Snow White was the one that brought the drama. And then this one was supposed to have another feeling or mood that it would give you. And it was supposed to be this like peaceful wonder, beauty attraction. So that being said, we have to actually fly on this thing. In order to fly on this thing, we have to get in a galleon. In order to do that, we have to build the galleon. So Kirk, do you want to take us a little bit into some of the construction and concepts and whatnot for these ships?
Shout out to Dave Landweb, which has always been an amazing resource for Distory to find photos of whatnot. But we were able to find some of the attraction ride vehicle images, which obviously we don't get anything as ornate as this, as you're getting to see multiple flags and not just like the main sail. So I think that's kind of unique. There is some adornments on the actual ride vehicles themselves. However, I was able to find some of these sculpts.
Yeah, that's by Chris Mueller who did that.
Okay. So we luckily get a lot of images from all around it. I think I don't know how big this one was.
It's not very big. This one is very small. It's almost like a maquette size is my understanding.
Yeah, that's the kind of vibe it looked like.
You notice that it's not nearly as detailed as the next version, as the big version that we get. It does have some detailing, but not nearly as detailed. I also have this one. I'm pretty sure this is Bruce Bushman as well. Another sketch of what these ships could like. So this is the model we just saw was based off of this sketch. That's how that works, is that he's like, here's this sketch. Now I'm going to make a 3D model of what this would look like based on those sketches. So then in the studio, they made a full-size prototype. And that's what you see here. This was actually pulled from the new Disneyland Handcrafted documentary that came out, which is fabulous if you appreciate Disneyland history, especially as they're building the park. Just can't recommend it enough. Really wonderful documentary. It's not all encompassing of everything that happened before Disneyland opened, but it really focuses on the handcrafting of how they shaped things for Disneyland Park.
It watches people like install things. Like I was watching people tack on the tents on the top of King Arthur carousel while they're like installing the carousel horses.
It's cool.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
Like, and a lot of it isn't really narrated, which I thought was interesting. It's more like you're just like watching the craftsmanship of the creators.
Yeah. It's a lovely documentary, and it's well worth the watch. But anyway, so these ships were more toy-like in appearance, with an ornate carved forward and aft and lanterns above their fantails. This is them actually sculpting more of those details into this. This is also from the Disneyland Handcrafted documentary, but they really went into deep detail in making this, and you can see them sculpting that here.
So what's crazy about this ride system is it was not a ride. Like,
right.
It wasn't meant to be a ride. And I'll explain that in a second, but the technical infrastructure of Peter Pan required like some unique engineering of a completely different system, which was manufactured by Cleveland Tram Rail Company. It was a firm that specialized in overhead conveyor systems for factories and warehouses. So what you're looking at with Kate's picture is people riding in like a plywood chair on this crane system or railway system. So I'm going to show you the company. This is in the Thomas Conveyor and Equipment Company. And this is the exact same rail system that's used for Peter Pan. It's the Gorbel Cleveland Tram Rail Overhead Crane. So you're literally riding on a crane. Like, it's like, think of like a winch and a hook if you're listening to this, with like a rail above you, almost like a girder that's rounded, but then you can move it backwards and forwards, and you could, just like a typical like hoist system, this one could lower and pick up, because that's what it was mainly for. It was not thought to turn this into a ride. It literally is just for moving stuff around in a warehouse.
Yeah.
Which, if you think about, like, man, the capacity sucks on this thing, because it was meant to lift up heavy, like, crates. It wasn't meant to put people on it. Cleveland's tram rail unique Tarka track, with its specialized raised thread and high carbon track, is the superior to I-beams in strength, durability, and consistency. So if you're complaining about this thing, complain about the Tarka track and the fact that you're on a conveyor belt. By the way, I gotta do a TikTok on this, because this is wildly interesting that I would have never known. I would have thought this was a ride system.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope. And that's why it failed quite a lot.
That's why it fails all the time. And literally, when you stop, you go, because you're on a dang crane, bro. But they were 7 foot long. The galleons were 7 foot long. And made out of fiberglass. They weighed roughly about 250 pounds over, that would hang on this crane single rail overhead tram system. The capacity on it is completely jacked. You know, Peter Pan takes forever to load, even though it's a continuous load cycle. It stops very abruptly. It's very jarring. But they use a keel and slot stabilization at load, which is one of the most critical innovations that they made to prevent the ships from swaying dangerously while guests were boarding. A metal keel at the bottom of the boat entered a narrow slot in the station floor. This locked the ship in place. Because remember, if we're like on this loosey-goosey crane, if you got on it, and your body weight, just by physics, literally the ship would go, "Wah!"
Yeah.
Bob Maddie was the one who created this system, locking the ship in place for the loading. As the ship departed the station, the track would then rise and the keel would exit the slot, allowing the ship to take wing and naturally sway during the sharp turns of the ride, which would create like a more intense situations or sensation of flight.
Yeah, they were really innovative at the time. You know, this was so different than any ride vehicle that had ever existed before.
I want to know, because I couldn't find it in my research. How did they figure out that they should do this? Because like a lot of times they reach out to companies that made amusements, made attractions. Like, who had the connect with somebody in warehousing, or C.V. like, Wood. Is there a connection point?
Yeah.
Oh, I need to hear this.
C.V. Wood was the one who had the contract with it. So C.V. Wood made all kinds of connections in Disney history for getting the park going. Sometimes his connections were a little bit underhanded. They're not necessarily most respectable or reputable companies and whatnot. And there's a lot of, I think it's 3 Years in Wonderland is the book that really covers C.V. Wood's involvement in Disneyland and everything that he did. I mean, credit where credit is due. I don't think they would have gotten the money if they had not gotten the sponsors that C.V. Wood did. The way that he went about getting them was a little bit, but he was the one that had this contract. He was the one that connected them with Joe Fowler. Like, he had a lot of involvement in making these connections. I think you might have been also the one that had the connection with Carl Bacon and Ed Morgan at Aero Development as well, for developing the other ride vehicles that we see in Fantasyland. So, C.V. Wood is your man for that connection. I just have a couple more pictures from that Disneyland handcrafted documentary. Again, really wonderful to go see them actually testing this ride track. And she doesn't have even a seatbelt on. Like, she's a brave lady riding in this prototype, flying around all this stuff.
You like how the dudes to the lower right are just chilling? They're like reading stuff. Meanwhile, there's a woman hanging above them in a temporary ride vehicle.
Yeah. So they built this test track and ride mock-up in the special effects shop building at the studio. So that's what we're seeing. This is late 1954. But this original track system was not reliable and had to be rebuilt. Bob Gurr said it was noisy and troublesome because it wasn't meant to hold people. So,
Who would have thought?
I also have some pictures of them installing the actual boats into the attraction, which is pretty fun to see them put it in. And the thing that I thought was really interesting about this, Kirk, was that you can see in this, there is a boat that is not painted yet. So it is gray.
Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is all made
Which
of
is kind of also weird because why are all the other ones finished and then they put one on that's unfinished?
I think
like,
that was the only one
when it was on there.
This was probably the only one that was finished, if I had to guess. And they probably the rest of them were unfinished. And they did do a lot of painting while things were installed. I know that after they put Timothy Mouse on top of the Dumbo attraction, Harriet Burns actually had to climb up and paint him while he was installed.
Yeah.
So
which not a big fan.
No, she was terrified of heights, so it was not a great thing for her. But anyway, I think because in a rush to just like what I'm guessing happened is they had a date for install that was set for delivery and install, and the painters just weren't done yet because of the rush of getting everything finished. And so
it's more important to get like the safety because you could do the paint easily
while it's hanging out here versus like
you nailed it, dude.
Yeah,
you nailed it, Kate.
Yeah, so I think that's what happened there. These were made of fiberglass and weighed 250 pounds, and there are 10 ships in all. So the sails were functional in that they blocked the view of the track and also encouraged guests to look down toward the sets. The earliest versions had alternate colors. Some were black and red with skulls and crossbones on the inside of the sail glaring down at the riders. So we'll see that more as we get into the actual attraction photos. But they did repaint these sails quite a few times over the course of history. And they also repositioned them. I was talking about this with our historian friend, Joshua L. Harris from Epcot Legacy, and he was saying, that they made them shorter. And I was like, I think what they did was they might have made them shorter, but I think they also like pitched them up so that you could see more out of the front of the boat. But the sails were functional in that they blocked the view of the track up above you so that you couldn't see the mechanism that was pulling you along. So it really is the function of the sails is to just block your view from the stuff you shouldn't be seeing and to make it more realistic and to point your view downwards towards all the stuff that you should be. I just have a couple more things from the install of this attraction. You can see them. The Peter Pan's entrance is on the right here with that kind of big green archway. So we can see then this under construction, them putting it on. And I don't know if you saw, Kirk, there is some really cool footage in that Disneyland Handcrafted of them specifically applying the mural that is on the back of Peter Pan.
Yeah.
Those were these giant, 15-foot like murals. I think it's actually longer than 50 foot. So they had these giant murals that were a preview of the attraction that they put in the loading area. And you can actually see them. They had pre-painted it most likely at the studio. And what they're doing is putting glue on the left and they're unrolling it and putting it out to glue it onto the wall, essentially, is what they're doing. So some people... I
love their overalls in this. It's just like bright white overalls. They look like the carpenter from Alice.
Yes.
I just want to show pictures because I absolutely love this. In my just looking around for Peter Pan stuff, I found all these construction photos and I am in love with every single one. So this is obviously Sleeping Beauty Castle being built, but just like the amount of dirt. Remember, they did this in 1 year. So it's just so impactful in how they built it, how they constructed it. The one thing about Fantasyland, which is kind of unique, and remember that the C-ticket attraction is Peter Pan here. The way that they shaped this courtyard that you're walking in. So you walk through the castle, you pop up into Fantasyland. On this image, you would be on the left-hand side is where you would find Peter Pan's flight, but it specifically was triangular in shape so that it was like immersive, like you went through a funneled space and then your viewing angle just like pops. So that was all purposeful. You got to take a forest for the trees moment and step out and look at how Disneyland was it was nothing. It was dirt. It was orange groves. Like, you really got to conceptualize that this park was wildly unfinished in its building. So like, look at all around Disneyland. You can't even imagine Anaheim looking like this today. So that's what I kind of taken aback. You can see in this picture here, which is colorized and much nicer. We'll talk about eventually the Chicken in the Sea ship, and then eventually the Pirates Cove. But Peter Pan is right here, just beyond the castle. But there was just so much, just dusty, sandy hills.
Yeah.
And I could never think of that as a theme park, but as something that was built in a year, this is an incredible, even with the unfinished areas, what an incredible feat.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to beat that.
Well, they ran out of landscaping budget, first of all, which is why there's a lot of dust and dirt everywhere. And second of all, it was a really dry summer. Southern California, it often is. And so a lot of their landscaping did die. So they were actually spray painting dead plants green and grass green to try to hide it. And they were labeling weeds with like Latin names to pretend that, you know, they were meant to be there and like something they intentionally planted. And if you go back, Kirk, like one or two photos to that overall from the front, so you'll notice that there's an awful lot of green on the left-hand side where it actually looks grown and whatnot. And that is the Jungle Cruise. And the reason it looks like that and the rest of the park does not is because the Jungle Cruise was the very first thing that they worked and planted because they wanted it to look like a jungle by the time it opened, which we talked about in our Jungle Cruise series. But you can really see it in this photo. That had a whole year to grow versus the rest of it was planted like maybe weeks before opening. And you can really see it in that photo.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So, that being said, thanks, Kirk, for taking us on a little tour of Disneyland.
I had to show it. Just because, like, I think, you know, when you talk about Fantasyland and it being built, it's just really cool seeing it. Remember, this is an opening day attraction. So, 1955, you need to see what Disneyland looks like in 1955 to understand where we're at.
Yeah. Very, very different than it is today. For sure. But
you're right. Thank you for humoring me. And let's head inside.
Okay. So we see the exterior of the building is those medieval tents like we had seen in the Bill Martin art earlier. And something I really like, Kirk, is the shield that's on the front, kind of like the, what is it called? Crest for Peter Pan. Just like they had for Mr. Toad and for Snow White, they also have one for Peter Pan in the front. And I do have a closer up picture of what that looked like here. And so it has Big Ben on the right and Peter Pan's face in the middle and then Tinkerbell on the left. And so just kind of an interesting style choice to put those in front of each attraction here. And then there is, you can also see the ticket booth in this one with that 35-cent cost as well. The other thing I want to talk about with this mural that we see and we load is that from left to right, I just want to show pieces of it. I don't have a picture of the entire thing that's unobstructive, but I do have kind of like the, if you can see piece by piece. So we have Skull Rock leering down at the ships as they emerge from the ride on the left. And then we see the mermaids splashing in their lagoon right here on the right-hand side of this one. And then we see a scenic pirate cove. This is the best picture I have of that. Then there are character portraits, Peter Pan, Wendy, the Lost Boys. They also have, just beyond them is like the pirates kind of lurking in the back. And Tiger Lily is also in there as well. And you can see the operators panel, which I know Kirk loves.
Yay! Press those buttons, my guy.
It's not particularly fancy. It's just on a little bar and it's a box sitting on a bar. It's not themed really. In fact, the whole load area looks kind of sad compared to what it does today. It's Do
you think that guy was going like this back in the day?
No. Well, they don't do that in Disneyland. That's a Disney World thing. Because Disneyland, you have to pull down your own bar. Yeah.
Wow, what a country.
Yeah. Because you have the Omnimover system where it's continuous load. So it automates that bar coming down just like in the Haunted Mansion, right? It's a simple say
Yeah.
that continue. We don't have that in Disneyland. It's a pull forward and stop and get in and then go, and so that you have to pull down the bar to load into that. But to finish this mural, you can also see there's another shot of the characters, and then behind these kids, you can see that there is London town as the last thing you see, obscured with clouds as you head on into the nursery window. This one I also thought was interesting, Kirk, because you can see how they got into the ships back then. There's just a step stool to climb into the boat. And which makes me think, was this pre-opening or was this actually in operation? Because it looks like it's in operation, but I don't see anything holding the keel at the bottom. That slot that they have that holds the keel is not here.
I think they probably added that later on.
Because they realized it was rocking back and forth when people were.
There's no way that would be not rocking. And that's probably why, if you look at the load sequence, there was literally an operator right there. He probably physically held the boat, and the other person helped literally get people to step into so it wouldn't rock too much. Like, he might have even been holding the front.
Yeah, that's possible. And they also don't have very much like costumes. Like, they're just like got light blue pants and like a pink shirt. Their costume.
Looking good though.
I know.
Looking good though.
Very dapper. And this does look like it's in operation because this one has guests and there's a step stool and there's nothing holding the keel. So this is definitely, but you can also see that skull and crossbones that's glaring at you as you step into the ship. I do have this picture also of Walt kind of inspecting one of the boats to get in it. And this one, you can see that track now that the keel is running through. So they must have added it later. I think you're right about that. I just have lots and lots of photos of these ships going into this because this is pretty much the only thing.
Yeah, how much later would have that been? It couldn't have been that much later. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure they dealt with that like since day one, and we're like, oh, we should probably fix this.
Yeah, I'm guessing it was probably when they made repairs to the track, which was pretty early on. Then they fixed it. But I know that there was a major refurb in 1960 as well, so it's possible in 1960 they fixed it. So I need to look at a few photos to nail that down. But we have lots of pictures of people loading into the attractions. You can see a lovely turnstile there on the left. I also want to mention that the only music that you hear in this attraction is from the film. They didn't have music specifically produced for the park at this point. They did, though, have a Disneyland piano book that features several selections from Peter Pan. But the only song that ever really picked up and got super popular from this, at least back in the day, was Never Smile at a Crocodile by Frank Churchill with lyrics by Jack Lawrence. And ironically, the lyrics are never sung in the film, but that became a fairly popular song from this. But that is the music they used in this attraction, was music from the movie. And I just have lots and lots of photos of them heading into this ride. So this one I think is interesting because it does say remain seated. There's a little sign for that before you fly through the window into the Darling Nursery. So let's actually go into this ride, Kirk. This is when it gets really fun.
Through the window, through the walls.
We're not going to keep singing that.
All these pirates crawl.
Here's a little bit of the blueprints of where we're headed, and you'll see that the Darling Nursery is actually quite small in this. It's just a 16-foot area, and the ships rose 2 feet as they entered in the nursery via a left-hand turn, and then you would see this. So it was actually like miniaturized beds of the Darling children, a pink dresser with a candle on it, some portraits of the Darling family on one side, and the other side had Peter Pan, and Neverland Island was also on the other side. So then what you would see is Peter Pan's shadow would appear on the wall, and the ships followed his shadow out the window as it moved from right to left past a barking Nana, which is in the corner. Then there was also a tiny Tinkerbell, I guess, that hovered in the window and then moved aside, which I don't have any photos of. And I do want to note that this scene, which is still true today, this scene is lit with incandescent light instead of black light to make for a more natural transition from outside to inside. We see this also in Mr. Toad's Wild Ride because we have Toad Hall and all those kinds of things. This is true for the exit scenes usually as well because they were designed by filmmakers. So you can think of it kind of as a crossfade. So it also lets your eyes adjust a little bit from having the abrupt transition from daylight, bright sunlight to black light. So that's what this scene works as a transition into the attraction.
Did you hear Bobby Driscoll in this with his recording going, "Come on, everybody, here we go"?
Yes.
Like, was that always present?
Yeah, from my understanding from the very beginning, that's what you heard as you flew out there is "Come on, everybody, here we go." And you go through the window. The other things we see in this scene, besides the children's beds, they have their toys, and there's some Nana's wooden blocks were also along to the right-hand side. So there's actually, though, it's pretty sparse in here. It's got, nothing, there's no wallpaper or anything like we'd see today, Kirk, It's different.
Yeah, considering the Darling family was like so wealthy, you would imagine it would be a lot less Spartan as it is here.
Yeah, this is kind of giving me like orphanage vibes. That's how I'm feeling.
It's kind of like their beds are kind of very much like the Seven Dwarfs. It just has like name over the top of the headboard in each one.
Yeah, it reminds me of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like the one in the film very much. I will say that.
No, not at all.
So when the ships climb through the bedroom and out into London, they could be made to swing sideways, which became a popular activity with the young riders. So Bobker remembers one incident when a boat rocked so wildly to the side that an external release pedal outside the boat's hull became lodged in the ride structure's drywall. So kids, they started to realize, well, we can make this thing swing. Let's make it swing. And so they would get it to go from side to side. They'd actually banged it in and it became a hole in the wall.
I love that.
So it stopped all the ride because the pirate boat could not proceed and whatnot. So they obviously fixed that so it wouldn't swing as much in later versions.
Clearly, guests have not changed at all because every time I'm on Soarin', please stop swinging.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everybody swings those things.
Mm-hmm. Are we ready to head into London Town?
London Town, or as I call it, Fakeville.
Fakeville.
Oh, I'll explain.
Do you want to talk about London Town a little bit?
Sure. London Town has a lot of large structures. The big ones that people note here are going to be Big Ben and the Tower Bridge. We're not seeing the Nelson statue here, but there are some graphical issues with London, like the geography is off.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, dude, check this out. And I got to shout out, I didn't come up with this.
Okay.
This is shout out to Parkeology because they did the research. Take this picture and I want you to frame the way that it's like S curving around with the River Thames, okay? Mm-hmm. And we're gonna pop ahead to how it actually looks. Big Ben is over here and Tower Bridge is over here. So geographically speaking, the river doesn't even go the right way. The river is actually supposed to bend like downwards into Big Ben versus bending upwards. So the river itself is not going the correct way. But they were trying to frame this specific point in the film. So they wanted to give you that perspective. That's why we swing in front of the Tower Bridge exactly like that. There's also a couple other bridges that are missing from this scene, but they do, I think, capture that one animated sequence and cell of when the kids and Peter are flying over London. I think you do get that concept really well when you're on the ride vehicle itself.
No. Is that, though, 1955? I feel like that's 1983.
No, I needed something that was further back. There ain't no pictures of further back, so that's all I got on that one.
I've got some.
Oh, you got some?
I've got some.
Well, but show it, bro. What are you doing? Dude, so rare I don't get to see him.
Yeah, for Kate's view only. No, just kidding. So as you left the nursery, you would feel a blast of night air as you went out the window. Then the ships would go up another 4 feet, and you would see these crooked English buildings on both sides of the path that seemed to drop away to aid in the feeling of ascent. This was built on a diminishing scale, so the buildings got smaller as the ships got higher. So you would raise up, and they would get smaller, and then that's how it shows you going over London, right? They also, I have this photo of the diminishing ones. There's also this pretty awful one, but you can see how tiny the buildings get pretty quickly as you go into the scene.
Do you want to see a picture of the model? You want to see a house?
Yeah.
That's what one of the houses look like.
Pretty primitive.
if you had $800, you could have bought one of these suckers.
What?
Because they were on sale. You could have bought yourself your own little Peter Pan little house. Isn't that so cool?
Look at how it's like crooked too. It's kind of like leaning.
Yeah, it obviously is like a perspective thing. That's why they had to like frame it like that, you know?
Huh. That's a cool find, Kurt.
Yeah, oh, thank you.
That thing is really primitive though. Look, it's just a box. It's like...
It's just I mean, look at the one side. They didn't even finish it because they're like, nobody's going to see that.
Right. It's like paint dripping down plywood.
Mm-hmm.
So then there's also these painted flats too. I think this is what was painted on the wall as you left this, which was just kind of like silhouettes of houses with some marks of paint that could then glow in the black light to make it look like there's a whole bunch of houses. So then this is an actual photo of what the ride looked like in 1955. So lot less effects. You can see, though, Big Ben is there. So Big Ben looked like it was kind of like stretched. So it's bigger at the top and it's smaller at the bottom. That's to aid with that forced perspective. There was some lights of London below. There was wire mesh clouds. There's stars in the distance. There's fog, aka fabric scrim that obscured the ceiling. A moon shone out from the mural on the far wall. And then there was tiny rows of moving black light headlights and sounds from speakers placed along the floor, which displayed traffic along London's busy streets. Now, I'm not sure if this is in the 1983 version or if this was in 1960 when they added effects. I think in 1960 when Yale Gracie came in to help add some special effects to this attraction, I think that's when they added the traffic effect, which was made by taking a bicycle chain, Kirk, and then every like little spike of the bicycle chain, they would paint with black light, and then they would run it in a loop. And so it would look like cars moving on the freeway, which is kind of a cool effect. But I feel like only Yale Gracie would have come up with that, quite honestly. So besides Big Ben, they also had landmarks like the Tower Bridge, the Thames, which, as Kirk points out, is not correct in its scale or shape or anything. They also had St. Paul's Cathedral and Nelson's Monument, but no animated hat tip that I know of, like the prospectus said, sadly. Big Ben also had a really loud chime as you went by it, so it did make some noise. But the whole scene was largely influenced by the film and Mary Blair's art, which we saw in our previous episode and talked about quite a lot, but I just wanted to point that out as well. And then as you exited the scene, you would see in the far corner of this picture, you can see there's like these two circles. What this is the tiny stars started to get replaced at this point by multi-pointed crystals that were floating on all sides of you to simulate kind of going through the second star to the right. And there was a Tinkerbell that was moving in a continuous circle as if waiting for each ship to follow her into Neverland. So that's what you see way far off in this picture. And it's really hard to see. It looks like a dot. Now we're going to head into the Neverland flyover, which I do have some photos of. I think, though, the majority of these photos are after the 1960 refurb, not necessarily 1955, right when it opened, except for maybe one of them. So the ships dropped a foot as they approached Neverland Island. The track bent slightly to the right, climbed up again as the large stars became small and distant again. And the stars were just blacklight spheres that are just spread around the room. The island was 15 feet long and set on a platform 2 feet above the floor and painted in ultraviolet greens, reds, and yellows. And it was just made of plaster. That's all this is. The ships flew along the left side of the island and doubled back across its center between the two highest volcanic peaks and then traveled along the right coastline. I have this one that was enhanced courtesy of Joshua L. Harris for us for this, which is just so cool to see all that. You can see the blacklight canisters in the ceiling, Kirk, that are actually making this illuminate, which is really fun.
There's not very often that I pick Disneyland over Disney World, but Peter Pan and this particular scene made me fall in love with Peter Pan in Disneyland. Mm-hmm. It's so immense, and I just look at ours in World and go, well, we got the short end of that stick.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the most beautiful scenes in any Disney attraction, in my opinion. And it's just lovely. And you get to spend a lot of time in there because of the way the track kind of doubles back and see the island from all these different perspectives. In Pirates Cove, they do have they have a ship that rocks back and forth. So you can see that here. There's also sounds of pirates singing A Pirate's Life for Me that was coming from the boat that you could hear. They had forests of miniature pine and palm trees. They had the effects of rippling water, cascading waterfalls, and molten lava from the mouth of the volcano. Again, probably after the 1960 refurb of this attraction.
So in the volcano scene, the glowing peak that appeared to bubble with lava, that was achieved by using air blowers and tiny styrofoam balls that were painted with fluorescent orange, and was a great practical effect addition. And then for the Indian village, a small cluster of teepees was lit by a flickering campfire light, which you can see in this image right here. And I know Kate has a couple more close-up shots that are better.
Yeah, so I have this one that's from 1955 that is before they added those effects. And honestly, Kirk, they're looking... That should tell you everything you need to know about how they're looking. That's... It's like...
If you can't see what I'm looking at, it looks like somebody took a bunch of sugar codes, but jammed a bunch of incense sticks in the top and painted them to look like teepees.
Yeah, it's giving children's craft projects is what it is.
100%. Dad, I have a project due tomorrow. Crap, what do we have?
Let me roll up a piece of paper and paint it with some tempera paint.
That is sad. That is a sad teepee.
But there is some like wire mesh that's coming from the campfire that's supposed to simulate smoke, which I guess is something.
At least they got that.
So this is all that Indian encampment that I was talking about earlier during the concept art. And obviously this needed a little bit of help because I think that they just rushed this project a little bit to get it done for 1955. So in 1960...
granted, hang on, time out. Flag on the play. I would say the argument, though, in all fairness, is that you go buy these things fast, and it's supposed to give you a perspective of small, so it's not going to be highly detailed because you're up high above it. So as long as it gives you the impression, good enough for now.
I also really like in this picture that you can see the painted stars that are on the back wall that are literally just painted there. It's really, it's giving budget Peter Pan. Timu Peter Pan is what we got here. Then it does get this wonderful enhancement that Kirk was talking about with the fire effects. So these ones look like they were given a little bit more love. And the smoke is actually fairly convincing from this because it does look like it's rising up from the encampment as well. So they did improve it a little bit. And also then when you made a second U-turn over the island, a little Tinkerbell flew in circles again on your right, which was easy to miss. But that's pretty much all I have for this scene.
I think she was made of plaster. Could you reach her? Do you know if you could touch her back then?
Can you touch Tink? I don't know. That's a good question.
The only thing that I found, and I can't confirm that this is from 55 or the 80s, but in terms of like the material, so it's like if you actually rode this in 1955, I need to know proximity to how close Tinkerbell was to you and your ride vehicle, because I found in a random article, it was mentioning that she was painted in blacklight paint, but it almost was like stucco-like, and her wings were really unique because they were fashioned from metal barrels with fins shaped like darts, so they were real small and almost made like a fluttering. But then it was close to the ride vehicles, and people would constantly rip her plaster arms off.
Oh, no.
In the 1950s.
Oh, my God.
I don't know if that's true or not. So, I mean, it would make sense because people would be grabbing the apples from Snow White.
Right.
That why wouldn't people grab Tinkerbell? So if you rode this in the 1955 version, could you touch Tink and grab her arm and rip it off? Let me know in the comments.
Do you have a Tinkerbell arm in your basement somewhere?
Do you have a plaster limb in your purse? I need to know.
I mean, you went by her at least twice that she was probably fairly close to the ship, so it would not surprise me if guests tried to tear her limbs off, which sounds awful.
It's really bad, dude.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to Skull Rock, shall we? So this is where you head next, is into the final scene, which is Skull Rock. And it's really interesting because the ships appear to pass through the left eye socket of Skull Rock. But in this version, it looks like Skull Rock's just kind of like cut. It must have been effective, though, from moving, because you can see the track on the upper right moving around the rock. It probably looked like in the dark you were passing through the eye of Skull Rock. And after 1960, though, you just sailed past the face instead. So they probably decided it wasn't very effective and they just replaced it with a full Skull Rock, which is closer to what we have today. We just passed by Skull Rock. The other thing is there is a Batmobile in this one, Kirk. I'm so excited I found this. So just like in what we had the chickens and Mr. Toad and in the Haunted Mansion in the attic, we had a mobile of bats that would float around. I think this is probably after the 1960 refurb that this effect was added, because this was kind of a hallmark of Yale Gracie to have bats that kind of like rotate in a circle. But it says mobile bats that are up there, which we did see in some previous concept art as well. That they would be there. So they had bats, you heard sounds of seagulls, and you headed into this 28-foot long dark corridor. You saw rocky ledges with human skulls on them, stalactites hung from the ceiling. There was sounds of wind in the cavern. You want to give us some wind there, Kirk? Seagulls. Give some seagulls.
Wait, hang on. Wait, what does a seagull sound like? Dude, I used to I heard those things all the time. That's like... That's the best I can do.
Thank you, Kirk. And then the ship descended. The track returned to 8 feet and 9 inches above it. And the highest point I should mention that I forgot to earlier was 16 feet up from Big Ben. That's your highest point in this attraction. And so now you've descended all the way back down to 8 feet, 9 inches. And standing on a boulder was Captain Hook ordering Smee to shoot down the guests. So Smee pointed a musket at the guests. So here we're seeing a picture of Captain Hook, and there's Tiger Lily in the water, with the water, probably rising up. And then there's a skeleton next to her, just chilling in the water as well.
Foreshadowing what Tiger Lily will look like if you don't help her.
Yeah, and then there's this wonderful picture of Captain Hook. So this is where he's trying to stab at you, like we heard in the prospectus. This is that scene now that we're coming upon here. And,
I love that. I love that for him.
Yeah, and you can see Smee, and although this is a better picture of Captain Hook, but Kirk, this one, thank goodness it was black lit and you probably couldn't see it, but the post that is holding him up just kind of gets me because it's in an interesting placement.
It's in his peener pan.
Anyway, so there's Captain Hook, and his sword is different here. If you notice from this one, it's short, and this one it's longer. I wonder if that's something I don't know if guests got close enough to grab that one and they had to make it shorter or what, but his sword definitely got shorter.
It's less menacing with a short sword.
Or it went the other way. I'm not entirely sure because this could be a later picture. They're just not dated, so I have no idea. And yet another one you can see of Smee shooting him down. Oh, and you can see the skulls on the rocks here as well in the foreground. Smee, I think he probably has some sort of action, animation of him leaning back, Kirk, because here you can see his pants are kind of covering this hole in his torso with his musket. And also Tiger Lily's in this boat. In case you didn't notice, she's also there too. So somehow she ended up out of the water and into this boat, and she's just chilling there. But you can see in this one, his pants aren't pulled up, and this might have been an earlier picture that they're not covering this gap, but it does look like there's a gap in his torso.
He probably, when he fires, right, it would illuminate the musket because there was that ring of, it wouldn't be LEDs, but there was the ring of light that was there. And then he would probably just hinge back every time he fired.
Yeah. I think that's probably what happened. So, and we're also getting a question about the skeleton, if it was any chance that this one was real. I think this one is because of Pirates of the Caribbean. No, this one looks very fake to me. And the ones that were also in Snow White that were manufactured at this time were also fake. So I think that they just made a plethora of fake skeletons for the Fantasyland suite. But that is a good question.
Yeah, that one looks like no skeleton actually looks like bright white like that unless you bleached it.
Right.
So
this one is not like the pirate skeleton. The only reason the pirates They were not supposed to have skeletons in Pirates of the Caribbean at all, but they got a good...
When you can buy cadavers cheap, why build skeletons?
Right. They got a good deal from the UCLA Medical Lab, which then John Hench said ruined the attraction because they weren't supposed to just have skeletons everywhere. That's a whole other story. But no, that skeleton was probably not real. So the other story I have is a funny story from animator Frank Thomas, who said, one of my biggest memories about the Peter Pan ride was when the ride first opened at the park and one of the flying boats broke down. This elderly couple was riding in it and they were up there in a little sailboat and they were flying along and they came to the place at the ride where Captain Hook is yelling, "Shoot them down, Smee, shoot them down." And all of a sudden, pow, the car mechanism broke and down they came and it spilled them out onto the ground. So they came out of the ride building, rubbing their hips and saying, "That's the greatest ride you have here. It's so realistic." And the park people asked, "Are you all right? Are you hurt?" And they said, "No, we love the ride. Can we go again?" So
that's so funny.
The timing of that is, can't plan that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
The last thing we have in this scene is the TikTok croc, which is looking fabulous, like a little checkerboard pattern. And they said that he lunged at you from eye level on a ledge. I don't think he did a lot of lunging, but maybe he did. Maybe there was some movement back and forth, but he for sure had a hinged lower jaw that had limited animation, so it would open and close.
I would think that he's on a rail system on the bottom, and he would slide forward and backwards, but that's probably it.
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's
and likely. That probably broke, and he probably just sat there and opened his mouth because that's probably more reliable.
Right. I think
because he's a pretty big piece, and I don't know what the weight is, but he's probably at least over 100 pounds for that motor system.
He's a big croc. Mm-hmm. So after that, you would go through a waterfall crash door that kind of looked like tinsel, and then you would take a left U-turn into an unnamed corner, and then that was the end of the ride. So this was your final hurrah, was the shoot 'em down scene. There was no ship floating off into magic, whatever, none of that. Just, this is it. This is the end. Then you would exit back out and see Skull Rock again and get out of your ship.
It's so interesting when they make these attractions and you're the perspective of the hero. Because again, like, we're so used to the version now where Pan is everywhere.
Yeah.
But I am curious as to, obviously they had to make that decision because of guest confusion. But I wonder how most guests felt when they got off this ride. Did they feel like they were Peter Pan? Or they said, "I went on Peter Pan. Where was Peter Pan?"
I think a lot of them probably said that, except they saw his shadow in the beginning, So,
oh, come on. Okay, his shadow, bro. I paid 35 cents a seat ticket. He's for shadow?
Such a chip. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So there were some ride updates, like I said, in 1960, led by Yale Gracie, who reworked and improved the attraction. They updated the track system. They resolved all of the problems with the track. And the lighting and sound system, scenery, and animation were all upgraded at that point. So a lot of the pictures I think we see, except for maybe the really early black and white ones, are probably from the 1960s and 70s before they did the refurbishment in 1983. So that's pretty much the attraction, but I feel like we can't leave this 1955 era without talking about some of the other Peter Pan elements that are present in Fantasyland, even just a little bit, because honestly, we got to talk about the Chicken of the Sea pirate ship, which honestly we could probably do an entire episode about that pirate ship in itself. So the Chicken of the Sea pirate ship was based loosely on the Jolly Roger, which was Captain Hook's ship from Peter Pan. You can see the concept here by Bruce Bushman, which actually called it a coffee shop, potentially, and said it would be a revolving pirate ship, which it never did. It never did any revolving, and it wasn't a coffee shop. We'll get into what it was in just a second. We could do an entire episode on this ship by itself, so we're just mentioning it because it's going to come into play later in 1983. So you need to know what it was about. But this is what it looked like when Disneyland. This is in 1956, I think, or 57, because you can see the skyways going by there. But it had its own kind of little lagoon, and then eventually in 1960s they added some things around it. But there was a resident of the pirate ship that was named Captain Guy, who was a cast member who had lost his leg during the Korean War and had a real peg leg. And he carried around little cards with him that he would sign. And the card certified that the bearer was an honorary skipper and treasurer of loot and booty. And the other side of the card had suggested names like Giggles or Strangler or Thumb for your pirate name. So I don't know what your pirate name would be, Kirk.
It would be Thumb.
Thumb. Mine would be Giggles.
What is that?
I think Giggles. I'll take Giggles.
Yeah, Giggles is good.
So one of the duties of the crew who worked the restaurant was to keep the decks mopped so that anything that was spilled on them would not cause Captain Guy to slip and fall, because he had legit peg leg. Okay. You can see him here. He was really popular with the kids. He's chilling here on this ship. But he also had a bird named Paco that was a parrot who was a terror and was known to bite. So here's just a few pictures of Paco, who lived on the ship as well. And I just thought it's just kind of a weird kind of Disneyland thing that, like, who knows about Paco and Captain Guy? Very few people do. And then one of my favorite rare things from this pirate ship is the pirate grog machine, which is just a soda machine, but it says Pirate's Grog on it, and you could get a refreshing soda on the ship. Now, Kirk, I know you had something to share from this ship as well.
Yeah. So first thing is the Chicken of the Sea pirate ship restaurant. Is it chicken or is it tuna?
It's a fish. Yeah, chicken or
but
fish.
I gotta show you some interior shots real quick, because I love food and restaurants. And so this is what the interior of the ship looked like when you would be buying your Chicken of the Sea, which they sold things like the tuna clipper salad, the tuna dietetic salad, which we did some research on, and that's like a nutrient-dense, lower-calorie version. They had fruit tarts, tuna burgers, tuna pie pastry shells. All of these items were somewhere between 90 cents and 55 cents. But the most popular of all dishes, and one that Walt Disney enjoyed himself, would be the only 55-cent cost tuna boat salad. What? I love how this 100% is like, okay, Chicken of the Sea people, what do we need marketing wise? You need me holding the tuna boat. We want to sell a lot of tuna boats because we're on the pirate ship. I think that makes sense. Let's get a couple pictures. Look at how much we love it. Like, you could tell the dude to the left, I didn't do any research on who he is, but you know he's like board member, president, somebody, CEO of Chicken in the Sea,
corporate suit,
probably
yes.
Director of sales and marketing is to the right, and there's Walt Disney staring at the tuna boat.
Adoringly.
Yeah, he is very enamored. You know who isn't adoringly? The people who work at the Chicken of the Sea. Not exactly adoringly. Although you can see what the tuna boat looks like a little bit better.
On ice. Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to lie, dude. I would be jamming on that if they had that right now. That's like, that looks delicious. Yeah. It's got an egg. It's got tomato. It's got romaine. I'm in.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I'm kind of sad this entire restaurant is gone in itself. It was a pretty fun place. And the whole reason that ship doesn't exist anymore, because they were planning to relocate it in 1983, but it fell apart because of termite damage. And they're just like, we just can't possibly do this, which we'll talk a little bit more as we head into 1983, because some of pieces of this boat do actually end up in that attraction later. But I do want to mention the other thing that we need to talk about from this area is in 1960, they added Skull Rock, this whole like themed eating area that's actually beautiful in Fantasyland with waterfalls. This is really important because of when we head into the 1983 remodel, that you know that this was there because they ended up removing it. And like what they ended up doing then. So I just wanted to show a few pictures of it since we are truly in this. And this, I'm sad that this is gone. There's now a big rock that is to the right of Dumbo as you go into the queue. That's kind of an homage to where it used to be. So if you want to pay your respects to the old Skull Rock and throw a coin in the fountain, there's some water there and there's a big rock, but it's not this. It's not this gorgeous, whole area, which people took pictures of itself. That's how pretty it is. Also, Kirk, at night, it actually lit up. So it had green eyes, which I thought was really cool. So
yeah,
it's kind of creepy.
It was tremendous. I mean, I found a couple of pictures that are interesting, like the ship, it said Captain Hooks at one point. And then under this canopy area over here in the back, you can notice that it was actually eating. So,
Yeah.
you know, if you wanted to eat outside, and then this was a walk-through section right in the middle. So you could walk through Skull Rock, or there would be this like little pathway that you would go behind the waterfall. And then look at this lady with her milk.
I love it.
Yeah.
I like her hat.
But originally it wasn't covered. It was just a bunch of barrels with tabletops added to it, and then you would sit on barrels, which I thought was fun.
Again, we could talk about this area for a really long time. We don't have time because this episode's already done. But before we end, I do want to show some of the characters they had that walked around. So we have Captain Hook here hanging out next to Skull Rock. And then we have Peter Pan. Looks a little bit different back then than he does now. He definitely has a darker green outfit with these green shoes. And then my favorite Kirk is actually the TikTok Croc, is what you could meet, who walked around with Peter Pan.
Oh, dude. That's what's up. That is what's up.
Yeah, he's awesome. So I'm kind of sad we don't have the TikTok Croc walking around in Fantasyland anymore. Bring him back. Petition to bring him back.
Yeah, his eyes are so good.
I know. It's so great.
They're so woggly. They're perfect. And you would know exactly that that's just not like a random gator because of that face.
Yeah. As we wrap up here, I just want to note that there was a lot of doubters of the custom-made rides and frivolous atmospheric design that Disney decided to do by the other amusement park owners. Like, we're looking at Skull Rock, we're looking at, all these things that he put in, the castle, we've seen that built. So I have these comments that are from a workshop that was held in November of 1953 at the National Association of Amusement Parks, Pools, and Beaches convention. So this included the leaders of Chicago's Riverview Park, Cincinnati's Coney Island, San Francisco's Playland at the beach, among others. So the biggest names in amusement parks at this time. So they had some things to say about Walt Disney's ideas that he was presenting in 1953 for Disneyland. Okay. They said, custom rides will never work. They'll cost too much to buy and they'll be constantly breaking down. Only stock off-the-shelf rides are cheap enough and reliable enough to do the job. The public doesn't know the difference or care. The proven money makers are conspicuously missing. No roller coasters, no Ferris wheels, no Tunnel of Love, no beer. Without carny barkers to sell sideshows, the marks won't go in to pay to go in. So they're like, you need people pulling them into the attractions. Things like the castle and the pirate ship are cute, but they aren't rides. So there's no economic reason to build them. There's too much wasteful landscaping. The interior finishing concepts of the restaurants are too expensive. And so they just had thing after thing after thing to say about what Walt Disney planned. They didn't want him to build the castle because it wasn't going to make any money. There was no walk-through attraction at that point. You didn't want him to build the pirate
to them,
ship.
that made no sense.
Right. Like, they're like, why would you build all this stuff? And so I just want to say that there will always be people who don't get you or who discourage you from pursuing your dreams. But, don't let them stop you. Like, do it anyway. They don't have to get it. You could just go do what you want to do and just do it anyway. Just because something has never been done before doesn't mean it's impossible. If Walt can build all of Disneyland in a year in a dusty orange grove and make it one of the most magical places on Earth, certainly what you're dreaming is possible too. So
I love that. That's a great way to look at build stuff because it's cool, not because you have to make money on it.
Right. Build. And that was always Walt's philosophy, right? It's like, if you make it high quality, clean, a good show, people will pay to come and experience it. The money will take care of itself, but let's take care of the people first, let's make sure that they're getting what they need. And that is, I think, the philosophy that, Disney was built on. And if Disney can sustain that philosophy, I think they'll continue to be successful. We hope you enjoyed this trip back into 1955 to explore this original Peter Pan attraction. Seen lots of really crazy old photos of things that most people have never seen before. So, Kirk, do you have any final thoughts here as we wrap up?
Don't rip off Tinkerbell's arms or Peter or Captain Hook's legs or swing the boats. Or basically, don't break the rides.
Don't break the rides. Don't steal stuff from the rides. And if you have Tinkerbell's arm in your basement, we would like to hear from you.
You can do it anonymously. Just send us pictures.
Yes, please. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for this episode of Distory. We hope you enjoyed a journey back in time to visit Peter Pan's flight, and we'll see you next time for another episode of Distory.